Well, hi, Christian. I can see how you've advanced this design in a couple of ways. The DJ Christian logo there in the foreground has been outlined twice, and there are also transparent, smaller logo copies that have been added in a diagonal orientation, giving a sort of hatched effect to the background. Now, when I check this with a color picker, I'm getting orange versus yellow-orange here most of the time. And I don't think you're using straight cyan either. This is a cyan blue color that you've got. Further, with a triad, I thought I mentioned before, the colors need to be equally spaced around the color wheel. So if you've got a 24-step color wheel, the colors will be 8 spaces apart. So this has a nice upbeat quality. I think it's well suited to the purpose you've designed it for. Well, hi, Teresa. This is a lovely presentation with your final project. You have advanced your idea. I can see that you have taken the split complements color harmony and modified it here, and I like the modifications you've made. However, I think there's still an issue with the way that the colors fit into the split complements definition, right? Essentially, you want to take complements and then instead of actually using one of them, use the two colors on either side of it. Right. I wonder if you're going to be the one who sort of gets a new trend going, maybe a kind of digital scrapbooking. One little nitpicking thing that I might mention here is it appears to me that the frame around the photo is not precisely the same red as we see in the design. And I think you know how to use the color picker to get that same red. I'd say if you want to use a different red, make it obviously different rather than mildly different. Well, hi, Joseph. Um, this is technically an analogous color harmony, but it's so close to being monochrome. I would say push it further in one direction or the other. Um, Now, let's see. I like the curving lines you've added to the mountains or hills. They echo to some extent the waves in the foreground. Um, Whether that's waves or snowdrifts there in the foreground, I noticed that you've applied some sort of filter to it. However, the effect is so mild that it's looking maybe a little like a flaw rather than something that's intended. Um, with your color wheel, set that to the outside of your composition for the purposes of displaying your works in a portfolio review and of course for framing. Well, hi, David. I really like this quirky design. I think that it fits well with your theme of water and the Japanese garden idea too. I can see that there are a couple of small adjustments you've made since last week. The fish and the yellow border on the bottom has been changed some. Um, this harmony is still not exact. Let's see, for split complements, like I was saying to Teresa, you want to choose a color and then its complement, but don't use the complement, use the two that flank it. So you're not pointing to just the right colors here, I think. And what's more is when I take the color picker to your work, I can only really get one blue. I'm not getting the more cyan of the two that you need. Hi, Alina. I think you've set out what you intended to do and you've become quite competent with Illustrator. One of the nicest little qualities that I see in this work is the frame and the way that the wood grain is made to run all the way around the rectangular shape there. I also like the leaf in the upper left corner. I like the way that you've divided it in half, showing a darker value on the bottom half than on the top. Sometimes I feel as though there can be too many things in a design. Also, I think it's important to have some repetition, and we do see that. For instance, in the top right, there's a red leaf on a gold ground that's repeated in the lower left. However, the ground isn't the same proportion, and I might suggest that that could be advantageous. I observed that with your various colors, you're working with color theory, and the shapes that are in front, by virtue of overlapping, also are the ones that advance color theory wise. Well, hi, Scott. I think this is something new for you, right? To take a drawing made by hand and then to scan it and use it in Illustrator. So you've had some success with that. This particular color scheme is making me think of fall or Halloween, and there is a certain spooky quality to um, a child with an unusual hairstyle seen here without neck and shoulders or body. So you could up the ante and make this into a sort of spooky design, or you could go in the other direction and include a neck and shoulders, making him look like the cute kid that he is. One small flaw I see here, if you check your file, it looks as though the gray backdrop is not matching up just right with the top shapes at right and left. Well, with Scott's composition, I'm not sure what the harmony would be. He's used a few colors that don't really fit into a particular harmony. Here, I think Christie's general direction is tetrad. However, it's hard to check the composition without having the color wheel here. Let's see, this design Christie has been advanced a great deal since last week. It's really quite amazing. I don't know the work of Josh Brill well, but from what I've seen, it seems that your style is even more realistic. You know, I miss seeing the body of the lizard, and I realize that there are a lot of details, and it's a huge undertaking to do the entire creature. But I hope you will for the sake of your portfolio, and if you do, please email me a copy of the file because I'd love to see how it turns out. Well, Andrew, you've been working along all through this session, and here we see work that's quite competent in terms of the color harmony, the analogous harmony, the colors there that you point to. A couple of things about the design. Now that I see this larger, I wonder whether there could be additional rays that get eclipsed by the mountains there in the distance. Also, I was looking at your thumbnails for assignment 2 in week 5, and I like that text, the sort of hand-drawn text that you'd included in the bottom left one. Also, the scale of the cross seemed to be more dynamic in that particular design. Here, you know, in the foreground, given the colors, I'm thinking that the subject is looking like fire, and I wonder whether that's what you intended. Well, hi, Luana. At first last week, I didn't recognize the person in this photo. I was thinking that it was just clothing. However, I see that it is working pretty well. You know, with regard to your color harmony, there's red in this composition, so it's not a true monochrome yellow-orange one. I wanted to take a look at your image there at top. It looks to me to be clip art, which is okay for use on a website. However, for your art classes, you should be designing the images yourself. So we don't want to see clip art for classwork, nor do we want to see it in a portfolio. So pay attention to that. I think you've given some thought to the text that would be needed with this web page. I noticed that maybe there could be a period after downtown prices, and I was wondering whether this line, your information will never be shared with other parties, should all be on one line. Well, Wes, this is a charming little city perspective view that you've given here. It seems like it's a complementary color harmony, though I didn't see where you stated that. Also, I'm looking for the color wheel here. So, let's see. With a closer look in this larger file, it appears that you're working with a scanned drawing in Photoshop. And I just wanted to say that Illustrator is an easier program to work with this sort of image in, and you'll get something that's really clean. It's not too hard to learn how to do that. Now, with regard to using a scanned drawing, if that's what you want to do, I'd say put the drawing on a separate layer all by itself, and also endeavor to make the drawing really look as though it was made by hand. One other little question I have for you is to do with the clouds and whether there is any ground to be seen here. Why is it that the clouds come down so low? Maybe it's a foggy day.